It's time to shift gears and see the world from a completely different perspective. We bring you high-octane stories and fast-paced narratives that will leave you breathless and wanting more. Click subscribe now and get ready to accelerate your cinematic journey today.
The morning my daughter-in-law handed me a cup of coffee, I noticed she didn't look me in the eye. She never used to be like that. There was a time she'd sit across from me at the same kitchen table, laughing about something silly my son said, asking me about the sweet potato pie recipe my mother passed down to me. That morning, she set the cup down fast, like she couldn't wait to get her hand away from me, and walked back to the stove without a word. I told myself I was imagining things. That's what we do, isn't it? We tell ourselves everything is fine because the alternative, that the people living under your roof, eating your food, sleeping down the hall, might not mean you well, is too heavy a thing to carry before the sun is even up. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that I'm 64 years old. I worked for 31 years as a medical billing specialist at a hospital system outside of Columbus, Ohio. I raised my son alone after his father left when the boy was 7. I bought this house myself in 1999. I painted every room. I planted the rose bushes along the front walk. I know where every creak in the floorboard is because I've walked this house in the dark 1,000 times. This is my house. I need you to remember that. My son. I'll call him my son because that's what he is. Whatever else he became, moved back in 3 years ago. He was 38. Said he and his girlfriend Renee had hit a rough patch financially. His lease was up, her lease was up. And could they just stay for a few months while they got back on their feet? I said yes. Of course I said yes. He's my child. Renee was polite at first. Kept the bathroom clean, offered to cook on Sundays. My son got a job at a logistics company downtown, seemed to be doing better. I thought, this is fine. This is what family does. You make room. The months stretched into a year, then 2. Then I stopped counting because counting made me feel something I didn't want to feel. That I had been too easy, too available, too much of a soft place for people to land without ever being asked to leave. I want to be honest with you about something. I didn't see it coming. People always say that about stories like mine, and then you think, how did they not see it? But I'm telling you from the inside of it, love makes you slow. Not stupid, slow. You explain away the things that don't add up because the explanation that does add up is one you can't afford to believe yet. Let me tell you what I started noticing. Small things first. Mail I didn't recognize on the counter. Letters addressed to my son with the word legal in the return address, tucked under the fruit bowl like they weren't anything. A conversation that stopped when I walked into the kitchen. Renee on her phone with her voice low, stepping out to the back porch when she heard my footsteps. Then a bigger thing. About 8 months ago, my son came to me with a folder. He sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where she put down that coffee cup without looking at me. And he spread out some papers and said, "Mom, I've been talking to a financial advisor. He said there were tax benefits to putting the house in a trust. He said it would protect me. He said it was actually something a lot of people my age were doing, and he'd done the research, and all I needed to do was sign a couple of documents to get the process started." I looked at those papers for a long time. I am not an uneducated woman. 31 years in medical billing means I have read more fine print than most people see in a lifetime. But these documents were dense. Pages and pages of language that looped back on itself. And my son was sitting right there, calm, patient, explaining each section like a man who had rehearsed this, who had an answer ready for every question I might ask. I signed 2 of the pages that night. I told him I wanted to keep the rest and read them more carefully. He said, of course, no rush. Take your time. I put the papers in the drawer of my nightstand. I told myself I'd look at them over the weekend. The weekend came and I got busy. My friend Barbara had knee surgery. I was back and forth to the hospital with her, and the papers sat in the drawer. I didn't look at them for 3 more weeks. What I found when I finally did sit down with those papers and a legal dictionary I pulled up on my tablet, what I found made me go very still. The 2 pages I had already signed were not what my son had described them to be. One was a limited power of attorney document. Narrow in scope, he'd said. Standard language. But when I read what I had actually authorized, it was broader than anything I would have knowingly agreed to. The other page was part of a deed transfer document. A partial execution, incomplete without the remaining signatures. but started. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that. I did not cry that night. What I felt was something colder than tears. It was the feeling of understanding finally what all those small things have been adding up to. The low phone calls, the stopped conversations, the folder full of papers brought to me like it was just a routine errand, like I was just a step in a process that had already been planned out before he ever sat down across from me. I did not say a word to either of them. This is important. I said nothing. I got up the next morning and made coffee. I asked my son if he wanted eggs. I asked Renee how she'd slept. I was pleasant. I was normal. And inside, I was thinking very, very clearly for the first time in a long time. I called an attorney that afternoon from my car, parked 2 streets over from my house. Her name was Patricia, and a friend of mine from church had used her for an estate matter a few years back. I told Patricia everything. I told her about the documents, about what I'd signed, about the dates. She asked me to bring everything in the following morning. I did. Patricia looked at those papers and she looked at me and she said, "You are lucky you didn't sign the rest." She told me that what had been put in front of me, if fully executed, would have transferred effective control of my property in a way that could have been extraordinarily difficult to undo. She said the power of attorney I had signed was broad enough to be used in ways I had not intended and had not been told about. She said, "Do you want to move to protect yourself?" I said yes. We spent the next several weeks doing exactly that. Patricia helped me revoke the power of attorney document through the proper legal channels. She helped me file paperwork to nullify the partial deed transfer before it could go any further. She helped me put new protections in place. The kind I should have had years ago. The kind that meant no one could touch this house without my full, witnessed, documented consent. I paid for all of it out of the savings account my son and Renee did not know about. The one I had opened at a credit union across town 4 years ago, after a coworker told me she kept a separate account her husband knew nothing about and called it her just-in-case money. I had always hoped I would never need it. During all of this, I kept living in that house like everything was normal. I cooked dinner. I watched television. I said goodnight. I do not know where I found that steadiness. Maybe from my mother, who used to say that you should never let someone see what you're holding until you're ready to play it. Here is what I was holding. Once Patricia had secured everything on the legal side, I contacted the housing authority and reminded myself of the exact process for removing occupants from a property I owned. I was not going to do anything irregular. I was going to do everything by the book correctly, with documentation, with notice, with every step exactly as it was supposed to be done. I gave my son and Renee formal written notice, proper notice, posted and hand-delivered both. My son read the letter and looked up at me like he had never seen my face before. He said, "Mom, what is this?" I said, "You have the time frame written there. Everything you need to know is in that letter." He said, "You can't be serious." I said, "I am completely serious." I said, "I am completely serious. And I'd like you to note that I am also completely calm." Renee came out of the bedroom and looked at him and then at the letter. And then at me. She didn't say anything. Her face said enough. My son tried several approaches over the following days. The first was disbelief. Then came explanations. The documents hadn't meant what I thought. The advisor had used confusing language. He had only been trying to help me. Then came something that looked like remorse, though I've had enough time now to wonder how much of it was real and how much was strategy. I listened to all of it. I did not change anything. I want to say something to you here. If you're listening and you're in a situation that feels familiar to anything I've described, the hardest part was not the legal process. The hardest part was sitting across from my child, the person I had given up sleep for, worked double shifts for, driven to every practice and every appointment and every school play, and understanding that he had sat across from me with a folder of papers and looked at me and seen not his mother but an obstacle between him and something he wanted. That is a particular kind of grief. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It settles in quietly and stays. But I want to tell you what happened after they left, because this part matters too. The first morning I woke up alone in this house. Truly alone, no one else's shoes by the door, no one else's dishes in the sink. I walked through every room. I stood in the kitchen where she had put down that coffee cup. I stood in the hallway where his voice used to drop low on the phone. I stood in my own bedroom doorway, and looked at the nightstand where I had kept those papers. And then I went and made coffee. A full pot. Just for me. And I sat at the kitchen table by the window where the light comes in good in the morning. And I drank it slow. This house is quiet now. It took me a little while to stop listening for footsteps that weren't mine. But I have stopped. And the quiet has started to feel like something it didn't used to feel like. It feels like mine. There are things I have learned from all of this that I will carry for the rest of my life, and I want to share them with you plainly. Do not sign documents you have not read entirely yourself. No matter who hands them to you or how they explain them, take them to someone whose only job is to protect your interests, not someone who brought you the papers in the first place. It does not matter if that person is family. It does not matter if they have lived in your house and eaten at your table for years. Your name on a legal document means something, and you are the only one who should decide what your name means. Keep something for yourself, a separate account, a relationship with an attorney, a record of what you own and how you own it. These are not pessimistic things, they are practical things. My mother called it knowing where your feet are planted. You need to know where your feet are planted. And the last thing, the one that took me the longest to make peace with, is this. Loving someone does not obligate you to be vulnerable to them. You can love your child and still protect yourself from your child. Those two things can exist at the same time. They are not contradictions. They are just the truth of some situations, and you do not have to choose between them by giving up the thing you worked for your whole life. My rose bushes came back this spring. They always do. I didn't do anything special to help them. They just came back because that's what they do when the conditions are right and nothing is crowding them out. I thought about that for a long time. I think I understand it differently now than I used to. If any part of what I shared today felt familiar to you, please take it seriously. Talk to someone. Get your documents reviewed. Know what you own. And if you're sitting at a kitchen table somewhere right now, trying to figure out what that feeling in your stomach is trying to tell you, listen to it. It knows something. It is probably known for a while. Thank you for sitting with me today. I don't take it lightly that you gave me your time. If this story helped even one person walk a little more carefully, a little more prepared, then every word of it was worth saying. Take care of yourselves. And take care of what you've built. Nobody is going to do that for you. But you can. You absolutely can. You absolutely can.